Back with you here on the Newsfeed PM. Well, the reopened inquest into the death of anti-apartheid activist Steve Biko has been postponed to November 11th for case management. This after the prosecution revealed there are still 2 surviving persons of interest in this matter. The National Prosecuting Authority enrolled the reopening of the inquest at the Gqeberha High Court. Biko's biographer, Dr. Andile M-Afrika, joins us now for more on that conversation. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Butabo, and thank you to the viewers. Good afternoon.
This development, right, the reopening of the books, as it were, does it send you back as well to reopen your books? I mean, does the context of this particular inquest in some way still hold up to the writings that are out there, or do you need to revisit them?
Not really. I was not motivated by Biko's death. I had been to the funeral. I had been part of the culture of commemorating Biko for most of these years, not all of them. And I came to a point where I realized that we were much more concerned with our own pain than with Biko and the life he gave us. And so I needed to do that kind of shift away from death, that the story ought to begin at the end. The story has to begin at the beginning. And I got into a journey of seeking to share how this man lived and what we think has left us and how we can look into the future through the tools that he had left us. Yeah. So we still carry on. And I think there's much more future in the life of Biko, because for too long, we've held ourselves back because we were overwhelmed by the manner that he died. Of course, yes, he was prophetic. He said people die in ways that can really politicize. But it's a downside in the development and advancement of society. Yeah. We have to move on.
Interested in that fact, you're saying there is a future in this. I mean, we just captured 2 stories now. One is of the Zulu dance celebration of that cultural heritage, but also, equally so, we're in Gqeberha, where we are seeing the exhumed bodies of political activists being laid to rest. Put it in the context of those happenings. We've also got a new political party, Africa Maibuye now, that we are talking about, and this future that you articulate.
I think the major projects that we can consider to carry on with Biko are a little bit different from that one. There's literature that he started. He was a young student of medicine, and in the context of the organization that he started, he built a trend in writing, which trend developed not only from Sasso newsletter, Black Viewpoint, Black Review, the novels that were written in the 1970s, the plays, the arts. That we need to develop with that trend, just as West Africa has done and East Africa as part of African writing. Biko should be remembered for consciousness. Yeah. Because he was very much worried with the state of his own people. Yeah. And he observed that his people are unconscious. Therefore, they have to be assisted to be conscious. Yeah. So that's a job to do. That's quite an education and a persuasion of allowing people to alter their mind from the conditioning done by oppression. So the job is much bigger. Academia has future. Working in community projects, just as he has laid for us a model through Zanempilo Clinic and through Nzwaka leather projects, how educated or skilled people can work with their own people in rural setups. Yeah. He had said that, and we did not learn from that. I come from the Eastern Cape. Many of his projects are around that area. I haven't seen government that side learning from how Zanempilo was put up and how it was run. Yeah. It's an irony that during COVID, when there was a story of the scooters, the World War I scooters, they were manufactured in the same town of Biko. Yeah. Yet Biko had set up a state-of-the-art clinic with 4 doctors, with ambulances that went around. And so there's so much to learn in how, what the skilled ought to do with their own people, because we have to keep our relationship. There is no point of being an intellectual or resourceful, and yet you can live the state of our people down. You have to enhance the life of your own people.
So
that's what Biko was teaching us.
Do you think the
project.
inquest itself, if it serves anything else, it will serve in that particular project of education? Because I mean, every time you hear Biko being quoted in the context of the turmoil of today, is they say, no, he was right when he says you're on your own, black man. I mean, that's really the one quote that comes to mind.
Get me right, Butabo. Yeah. The inquest is very important because the family needs that kind of closure. I live with them. I know the kind of trauma they've been going through. And I was once very close to Biko's elder brother, and he would talk very privately how they felt the loss and the continued, especially the confusions.
Yes.
Kaya Biko had a time listening to Captain Hussein, who was talking to Biko outside the offices of BCP, saying that if you do get to PE area where I am an officer, you will, it's words that I cannot pronounce here.
Yeah.
So that has been very, very difficult for them. I think this is a very good thing that it's happening. There is going to be that kind of closure. But I choose to be future orientated. I choose to look much more the use of Biko as not only a symbol, but a toolkit for future generations. And I don't wish to fall into the trauma and the pit. Some of us must really walk the talk.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. Yeah.
The consciousness, I mean, the pricking of the consciousness outside of telling the story. I know your focus, you're saying, let's maybe focus on that intellectual legacy. How do we represent that intellectual legacy in a way that will then prick that consciousness in today's context?
I'm for the idea of a creation of a new generation. What I see and what I learned from Biko's generation, that is now the youth of the 60s and the 70s, is that they had no adult guides politically. The ANC had been banned, the PAC had been banned, and they found themselves in universities and started to begin to talk around themselves on the issues that they were meeting in that university setup, and they started to extend themselves outside university, realizing that whatever they had was traceable to where they lived. Now, this is a generation that found itself, that created a set of ideas and began to enrich this country with the only indigenous philosophy, the philosophy of black consciousness.
Yeah.
So that is one part that we can really learn. I think the country is in such a mess that if we would have prescriptions for each and every problem, we will end up getting to attend to other problems. But if we take the hard line of seeking to develop from the ground up a new generation through education, through engagement, through conversation, the old must talk to the young,
right,
and the old must expect to hear from the young.
Yeah. When I say that, somebody might say, or especially the young might say, are you saying there are new ideas or new iterations of black consciousness that we could take a leaf from the old, but not necessarily a hard copy of what black consciousness would have been in the old to what black consciousness would mean?
I think we have not really gone into the attributes of the man. We have not really gone deep into explaining the essence of the philosophy. People talk about pride, and people talk pride in a very cheap way. Biko had combined the importance of education, the importance of dignity, that dignity is connected. It's not an empty pride. It's a pride because of dignity. It's a pride because of knowing yourself. This is not just the pride of walking around and have your head eye up. So until we go deeper into the meanings, into the attributes, maybe I can talk about how Biko could expand himself as a young person,
yeah,
how Biko could assume certain compositions in his own. A junior student in law, a student of correspondence, who walks into a high court in Pretoria and gets to interface with the top prosecutor in the country,
sure,
and a judge. And at the end, all observers that are in the room and others in the world can say, that's the man who knows law. This is a simple man who was just a junior student at UNISA and also a corresponding student. A student of medicine who is excluded from the medical school, But in 2 or 3 years, he comes back and he builds a hospital, and he calls his friends who are doctors to come and run a hospital. What kind of an individual? What has he brought this person onto himself? And these are the attributes that we can examine, that we can tease out, that the children of this country can begin to compose themselves, to add on the things they have. I think Biko was a very important gift to humanity, not only here, but around the world.
A refreshing approach to it. I mean, to what we tend to think what blackness should really be, or blackness, others saying, should be anti-whiteness in a sense, and it creates a whole sort of debate around what really blackness really means. And you're saying, well, there are more ideas to this idea of blackness than just that.
Of course, yes, because they were working with what was available and they were giving new meanings. Yeah. So there will always be that kind of debate. But let's look at it this way. The black student were talking about presence. The presence in society politically. Because where they came from, they had immersed themselves with a non-racial organization, a white organization essentially, and they had no presence internally. And another class of people and racial group was defining who they are and what route they had. And now they needed to negotiate and say, this is our space, we are present. Black Lives Matter in America had come with a very powerful statement that blacks do matter. That's about presence. We shouldn't be looked at as non-existing, invisible, because the system of oppression, the system succeeds when it makes you to be invisible, when it can make you to believe that you don't exist, and you can just tolerate all things. Blackness is about presence. Blackness is not the scheme. Blackness is not black and white. We're not going to go back to... people should not be... that's why I was saying people should not take it very cheaply. Because it is about their own essence, their own integrity, their own intellect. We have had so many years with almost the very same system of education, right from the pre-94 area. We haven't made a presence in the package of education of black intellect. There's nothing there. You go to, our children are going to school, they don't know who Biko is, who Mandela is, who Ani is. Except for that, they have no histories about the towns where they live. Sure. I live in King Williamstown. Yeah. That King Williamstown used to be a capital of a British royalty. It was called the Crown Colony. Now they had replaced the name, because there's a name change, with no education. You take away king and you put God, without explaining that when it became king, it was because of the naming system of the British, which was not only done in King Williamstown, it was done in all colonies of the British. So that's what you need. You need education. You need a process of building a new society, especially at the level of psyche, because Biko was worried. One of the things he says, and he keeps saying in his writings and in his own actions, is the greatest worry is how our own people can agree to their own demeaning. Yeah. I'm only paraphrasing him.
Yeah. Wow. Dr. Andile, let's leave it there. Much appreciated. Thank you very much for coming on, just highlighting some of the important political, ideological, intellectual aspects of Steve Biko, and I suppose the opening of the inquest will spark that conversation, but other conversations as well.